There's so much unlearning that neuroqueer people have to do when it comes to sex and relationships because not only is there the whole like queering side of intimacy, unpacking things like cis heterosexual scripts, femphobia, or gender dysphoria, those kinds of things. But then there's also the neurospicy side and learning how that side of you is going to impact or show up in intimacy. That's just more so expanding the idea of what intimacy actually is.
Welcome to Come Talk with Amy, the podcast where sex isn't whispered about, it's talked about out loud. I'm Amy, your host and intimacy coach, here to spark raw, playful, and unfiltered conversations about relationships, desire, and everything in between. No shame, no scripts, just real talk about what really turns us on. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Come Talk with Amy. Yes, we are here and we are queer. It is Pride Month. Happy Pride Month, everyone. To celebrate Pride Month, we have the fabulous Emily Zawadzki in the house today with us. Welcome, Emily.
Hello, hello.
Fabulous. I always want to say here in queer because, embrace our queerness. It doesn't work in every room, in every situation. Today it does. So I am in love. So for people at home, Emily is a queer sex educator and coach and a support worker with 10 plus years of experience supporting kinky neuroqueer folks. Yes. She helps them redefine, navigate, and enhance their sex and relationships. She has contributed to articles featured in Diva Magazine, Cosmopolitan, and Unbound Babes. Fucking low. We love it. Emily, we are so glad to have you here with us today.
Yeah, as Emily said, I am Emily Zawadzki, also known as Emily Zed Sex Ed. I use she, her pronouns, and yeah, I'm a Canadian queer sex educator, both in my local community and on the internet.
Amazing. Amazing. Yes. Tell everyone where you're dialing in from today.
Coming in to you from Canada, about an hour from Toronto, Kitchener-Waterloo, if anyone listening knows it.
All right, Emily, before we dive into today's topic, I would love to know what is making you hot and bothered lately?
Ooh, honestly, summertime. I am such a summer girly. I hibernate all winter. As I know, can't Canadians, we have it, snowy and cold. So hibernate all winter. So I am ready to get out there and start living my best life. Now that it's Pride Month as well, I'm ready.
Yes, yes. I know, I got my pride
Yeah.
nails. Woo!
Ooh, those are gorgeous. I love those.
Yeah, later in the month, I'm gonna have pride eyelashes too. So, Emily, I am curious, what got you started in the coaching space, specifically sex ed and with queer folks?
I've been a sex educator for a long time. I got my university degree in a program called Sexuality, Relationships, and Family Studies. Very like sex therapy vibe, but I was like, I don't really want the whole clinical side. I really liked education. So I kind of continued on that way, doing your classic, like condom on a banana, sexual health type, Planned Parenthood kind of sex education. But as a queer person, as a lesbian, and I'm, like I said, a support worker for folks with disabilities, I realized that there was just like a huge range of folks that are not getting sex education that works or fits for them. So I kind of chose to center my sex education on the neurodivergent and queer, aka the neuroqueer community. My wife also has ADHD, and so she got diagnosed actually when we were together in our relationship. That was also a pretty pivotal point, I think, as well of me trying to show up for her personally, but it also obviously spills into professional side as well.
That's amazing. So needed. And we love, as a neurodivergent, love myself. We love a partner who understands our neurodivergence, can support us in our neurodivergence. Yes, yes, yes. So, what is the difference between just like talking about being neurodivergent and queer versus, what I see on your platform a lot is you use neuroqueer. So, define that for us, break it down. We want to know all of the things.
Well, to put it simply, especially if this is like the first time you're ever hearing of this term, neuroqueer is the experience of being both neurodivergent and queer. But I think like kind of taking it a little deeper is it describes more so what happens when your neurodivergence and your queerness have influenced one another, right? So it's more about like a way of moving through the world, that questions norms around things like gender, sexuality, relationships, social expectations, all that stuff. As with every label, though, it is personal, and not every queer and neurodivergent person identifies with or as the term neuroqueer. But I think for many people, the term captures something that's like important, which is the fact that these parts of themselves aren't necessarily separate. They're actually often quite intertwined, and that includes in sex and relationships as well.
Yes. Oh my God. And we can't talk about neuroqueer or neurodivergence without talking about social conditioning, right? So, how much of what we call normal in sex is actually social conditioning? And how does that impact us neuroqueer loves?
Yeah, probably way more than people realize, to be honest. I think we tend to think that a lot of our preferences are completely personal, but honestly, most people inherit like an entire script about what sex should look like before they've even started having sex a lot of the times. So things like who initiates, what even counts as sex, how long it should last, things like what desire should look like. I think those are all like largely stories that are being pushed through mainstream culture and media, aka our good old friend social conditioning.
Yes, that has impacted all of us and continues to impact all of us. But we are waking up, and that's why we're having these conversations. Yes. So, also with both neurodivergence and queer, so that like definitely neuroqueer, used to masking, right? To fit into this quote unquote norm. So, what are some ways that neuroqueer people are taught to override their bodies in order to appear good at relationships?
Yeah, I think a lot of neuroqueer people from even a very early age kind of learn that their natural reactions aren't necessarily the reactions that other people want from them. So you kind of get really good at overriding your own signals in order to be accepted, quote unquote. So, for example, if you're like sensitive to noise or touch or eye contact or something, you might receive the message that your discomfort is inconvenient or it's something that you should just try and push through for someone else's sake. And over time, I think that that can teach you to trust other people's expectations more than your own body's feedback. And then in terms of like relationships, like that can show up in that space as well. So, for example, someone might ignore sensory discomfort or overwhelm when maybe cuddling with a partner because they don't want to disappoint that partner, or they say yes to something that they're maybe unsure of because they think that's what they're supposed to do. But I think it's basically like you learn to prioritize being a good partner rather than being an authentic one.
Ooh, I love that. Yes. And how can people be more authentic?
Think communication is a huge piece. I think first of all, there's a lot of like the self-awareness that goes into it. And then once the self-awareness piece is there, I think then communicating that with others, especially partners, playmates, that kind of thing, I think is huge, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to this concept of masking, how does that show up often for neuroqueer loves in the bedroom?
So, masking, for like you said, anyone who doesn't know, is the conscious or unconscious suppression of neurodivergent traits, usually to appear more neurotypical. And although it is often referenced like more so for neurodivergent folks and the neurodivergent community, I would argue that it extends into queer people and the queer community as well. Because some folks might suppress queerness or they act in a way that they think a queer person should act. Basically, they're putting on a mask for the rest of the world to hide who they really are, whether that's because of something as deep rooted as shame or just simply not really knowing who you are and where you fit in yet. But in the bedroom specifically, masking might look like faking enthusiasm or maybe faking an orgasm, pretending sensory discomfort isn't happening, forcing eye contact, performing desire or queerness or even gender in a way that maybe doesn't feel right to you, or maybe acting like spontaneity is super exciting when it's actually more stressful for you. And I think like the important thing to remember is that although masking does protect us socially or emotionally, it also can kind of disconnect us not only from ourselves but from and like our own bodies. But I think it disconnects you from a partner because once again, you're not really showing up as your authentic self, right?
Absolutely. And I would be curious because you mentioned that your partner, your wife, when she learned that she was neurodivergent, right? So if you're willing or able to share that part of your journey, I would love to find out how discovering her ADHD diagnosis, like how that impacted and unpacking things in the bedroom for you guys. And, you mentioned this idea of authenticity. Like, has she been able to, and you together as a couple, been more authentic in your sex lives?
So I think it was really helpful because when we first started dating, like a lot of sex just kind of felt hard a lot of the time, honestly. And it was hard for me, like I said, as the partner, because a lot of the times she was getting dysregulated. And so sex would end up maybe in like emotional crying or sometimes like a full on spiral type shutdown. And, you're trying your best to be a supportive partner, and especially like, as a sex educator as well. Like, you'd go above and beyond to try and help and figure out what's wrong kind of thing. And it wasn't that anything was necessarily wrong. We weren't approaching it in the way that we should have been because we didn't know what was going on. So once she got the official diagnosis that it was ADHD, we was able to use that information to then approach the situation a lot differently. So in terms of like, for example, I mentioned communication. We were always communicating in a good way, quote unquote good way, but now it was more like explicit. Now it was more, how can we communicate in a way where we both feel safe, secure, affirmed, and it's not going to try and dysregulate or, have anyone feel upset kind of thing. And so, I mean, I can't speak for her and her own personal journey. I think like that's another side of it. But I think like, once she kind of realized that that was something we had to work with and it's okay to, bring that into the bedroom. Actually, we probably should be bringing the neurodivergence into the bedroom because it's going to show up there anyway. Yeah, I think it was helpful to we basically just like I think it's still a learning curve. We're still obviously figuring things out, but it's a lot better. And I feel like we're both probably a lot more taken care of, that feeling of being taken care of.
I love that. I love that for you. Everyone needs to be taken care of in the bedroom. Yes. And it's amazing when we have information as knowledge, right? And power. And I'd be curious too, this journey that you and your wife have taken and you being supportive to her and understanding her diagnosis and what that means. How has that helped or enhanced your work with other neuroqueer clients that you have?
So much, so much. Like I was saying before, like my sex education was very like, classic, I guess you could say before. Like it was still, like I like to say it was universal and accessible. I'm still, a queer person first, and that was always forward in my work. And same with it being a support worker too, right? Like seeing folks with, ranging disabilities from autism to Down syndrome and physical disabilities. That was still like kind of like in my brain a lot of the time. But I think specifically focusing on the neurodivergent side, I was learning things to show up as a better partner. But a lot of the times, those same skills, specifically around communication again, we love some communication, but those skills also, I think, apply to just like working with folks in general. It was important to me to be able to find those resources, not only for my wife, but for me as well. And I think within finding those resources, I did a lot of going back to school type of relearning education. Like I took a course, I got a certificate in being a neurodivergent aware sexuality professional. So I think it was more so like motivating me to kind of almost take the switch into making my sex education and the content and just the work that I was doing to be more specifically neurodivergent, inclusive, and accessible.
That is so beautiful. Like, I love that. And I think it's so amazing how your personal experience has informed your work and also like, your desire to be more accessible. Like, yes, yes, yes. Okay. So, for people at home that may be like, still trying to figure like sex can be hard for all of us to talk about, to understand for ourselves, right? Hence why we have these platforms, why we're both coaches, right? Because we are here to help the people, help the masses. So, how can someone tell when a sexual preference is authentically theirs versus something that they've inherited from these cultural scripts? Like, ooh, this is yummy mine versus this is what I need to or should. We do not like to should on ourselves, but a lot of us do. We're shoulders.
Oh man, I think it can be hard to sum it up into like a full universal experience, but I think like at least personally, genuine desire feels more connected to things like curiosity, pleasure, and especially choice. Whereas I feel performance can feel more like an obligation or an expectation, or maybe even that you're trying to prove something to someone, whether that person is yourself or somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd be curious too, in your work with neuroqueer folks, have you or have they identified any subtle signs that they are disconnected from their own pleasure?
Everyone can have different type of like body signals or a way that their nervous system is trying to communicate with them, or even that their body is trying to communicate with them. Well, I think that's where also like solo exploration, masturbation can be such a great tool to really kind of help you gather insight into your own preferences and boundaries and what those mean to you, and if they are aligned with who you are or and what you want, or if it's something that you feel was told to you kind of thing.
I love that. We love like a shout out to masturbation. And yes, go touch yourselves always and forever. So, what other tools can people use and practices to help them feel more connected?
One question that I like to use with clients sometimes is if nobody was around or was watching, if I was just alone, would I still want this? So, like, once again, this is where soul exploration, that masturbation, keep talking about it all day long because we love it, is a great tool. So, when you're alone, if no one else was around, would you still enjoy it? Would you still choose it for yourself? Is it something that you're still going to prioritize for yourself? I feel like it's that kind of thing.
Yes, I love that. A little mindfulness exercise to really drop into that, you know? And what about consent? Are there any special considerations when it comes to consent for people who are more neurodivergent, neuroqueer?
As a longtime sex educator, teaching the idea of consent, especially enthusiastic consent, was something that I used to do all the time. Notice how I said used to there? I feel like I used to describe consent in ways like at the time felt enthusiastic, right? So a clear verbal yes, excited energy, potentially like sensual touching or like leaning in. Maybe you've even taught or like experienced versions of this of yourself as a sex educator and coach as well. But as you know, for a lot of people, this framing, it does work and it's probably fine. But the more, as we talked about, that I started working to make my sex education more neurodivergent inclusive, I started to realize that not everyone expresses or can interpret desire or enthusiasm in ways that are easy to read. So if someone has difficulty interpreting facial expressions or body language, then just like looking for enthusiasm doesn't really work. Right? It's like, what does enthusiasm even look like if you can't really actively, reliably decode those signals, right? And then on the flip side, not everyone performs enthusiasm in like big, obvious ways. Someone might feel a genuine yes, a consented yes, but without having the high energy kind of cues that we often associate with enthusiasm or even high desire, right? So then it's like, are they suddenly not enthusiastic enough for their consent to matter or to be of actual consent? So I don't know. What I've learned is that consent isn't really about like what's present. It's about more like accessibility, I think. So like if a consent model, which to me was the enthusiastic consent model, if it relies heavily on things like reading subtle cues or, performing quote unquote recognizable enthusiasm, well, then I think it just kind of automatically excludes people.
Yeah, no, I love that. It goes back to that accessibility that you were talking about, right? And taking in, I like to say, and what I'm cluing in more and more for myself is like, my brain doesn't work that way. And that's okay. And how does my brain work in this situation, right? And how can I then explain that to my people that this is how I understand things so that it can be productive and juicy and yummy for all of us? And I'm curious too. I would love, love, love to know from your perspective how might neuroqueer people challenge our understanding of what intimacy actually is? We need to learn all of the things from our neuroqueer loves.
Honestly, I feel like ultimately neuroqueer folks just expand the definition of what intimacy is, what it looks like, how it's formed, how it's sustained. There's so much unlearning that neuroqueer people have to do when it comes to sex and relationships because not only is there the whole like queering side of intimacy, so unpacking things like cis heterosexual scripts, femphobia or, gender dysphoria, those kinds of things. But then there's also the neurospicy side and learning how that side of you is going to impact or show up in intimacy. So I think, yeah, it's just more so expanding the idea of what intimacy actually is.
God, thank you, Neuroqueer loves, like, expansion. Yes, yes, yes. We all can learn to expand and not try to just fit in this box, right? Get rid of the box. That reminds me of, I don't know if you know Ian Kerner. He was a guest on my podcast, and on there, he was like, I just want people to question, like, where are you getting this? He was talking about sex scripts. Why are you so rigidly invested in this narrow belief? It's probably not exactly what he said, but his words are a little bit more brilliant.
That's true. It's like, why am I carrying this with me? Let's get rid of it if I don't need it, if it's not serving me.
Exactly. And also, what can serve me that I haven't even thought of, right? Like, sky's the fucking limit. We want that for you guys.
Think outside the box, pun intended.
I'm curious, in your experience, what relationship advice have you seen that works beautifully for those neurotypical folks and completely falls apart, does not work for neuroqueer folks?
Well, when you're challenging like the normalcy, but in specifically, I think like the way that successful relationships are supposed to follow the same milestones or follow the same order, I think neuroqueer people often challenge the assumption that like, intimacy has this predetermined path. Some people want non-monogamy, some people want more clear platonic relationships, some want a kinky relationship or a relationship that has no label at all. So I think one of the most liberating things about being neuroqueer is having that willingness to ask, does this actually work for me? Does this work for us? Or, like, once again, like we've just been talking about, is this relationship what I think a relationship is supposed to look like? Right, versus like, is it something that actually works for me?
Yes, it's the supposed to, should, right?
Yeah, the shoulds again, the should haves.
Yeah. Be curious, like, what is possible for you, right? Not, it needs to be this way, it should be that way. Like, mm-mm. Explore. And Emily, speak sensory to me. Can accommodating sensory needs actually create more eroticism rather than less? And how have you specifically seen sensory play help and enhance the sexual experience for your clients, if at all?
Yeah. Can accommodations create more eroticism? 100% yes, absolutely. Next question. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think accommodating sensory needs is a huge part of, I think, being one, aware of your own needs as a neurodivergent person, but also as a supportive partner to a neurodivergent person as well. So this can include anything like adjusting the lights, adding or removing tools, adding or removing a certain type of stimulation, or just honestly doing whatever you need to make you feel more comfortable. Because I think when people feel safe and especially regulated, they often become more available for pleasure and connection.
I love that. For pleasure and connection, yes. Also, as you were talking, I was thinking it is part of the exploration, which can be so yummy, right? Figuring out, what are my sensory needs? Like, do I feel better with a blindfold on, with the lights off, with them dim, with a specific type of sheet? All of the things. And one is exploring that for yourself, right? And naming that for yourself, and then being able to communicate that with your partners. Or, like, let's say, ooh, I love oral and I love it. It can be really juicy for me when we're in this specific position. You can also say, like, very straightforward, this is my neurodivergence, this is how I want it. But also, you can, like, be a little foreplay and sexy with it too.
Totally. Yeah, explicit communication doesn't have to be like bland or boring. Explicit communication can be hot. Actually, sometimes it can be more hot. You want to tell me exactly what you want to do to me? Okay, please go on.
Yes. Hello. And then on that note, let's talk about sexual confidence. Okay. So when we're not shooting all over ourselves, right? And we're not focusing on performance, etc., what does sexual confidence look like for somebody in the bedroom? And for, like, when you have helped your clients break down some of these barriers, how do they step into their sexual confidence?
Maybe this is controversial, but I don't think being sexually confident is about being spontaneous or more importantly, having lots of experience. I think a lot of people conflate sexual confidence with, having lots of experience, whatever that experience is. But I believe it's more about kind of what we were just saying, knowing yourself, knowing well enough that what you need to advocate for your needs, and then having that self awareness, trust, these affirming, accessible tools that are basically ready to go whenever you need them, like your own little toolkit, sexy toolkit kind of thing.
Yes, build that sexy toolkit, loves, and share it with your partners. And we love it. We love it. So, I am also curious about people that you've worked with, or even as you mentioned, like your wife, as she's discovered her neurodivergence. What's something that you've noticed in your clients, your wife, et cetera, other neuroqueer people that they discover about themselves that changes when and how they approach relationships?
That they don't actually want what they thought they were supposed to want. And this could be anything from relationship structures, frequency of sex, to gender roles, or even communication styles. But like we talked about before, like I think this comes though from being able to expand what the definition of intimacy and sex or relationships like actually is for you.
Yes, and that sounds like such an empowering journey too, and realization, and like a big exhale.
Totally. Yeah. I find that the folks that have come to those conclusions, like I said, it's not really what they thought they want. It is huge because it's kind of like what we've been talking about through the whole episode. It's a lot of like unlearning and figuring out, was it what you wanted or what you thought you were supposed to want or what you quote unquote should have wanted, right?
Yes, absolutely. Oh my God. Okay, so let's go on this journey. Let us redefine sex education from a neuroqueer lens. What would immediately change for us?
So, first of all, stop making assumptions about identity. Use more clear and precise language. Diversify the tools and formats. Create predictable structure. And then lastly, invite neuroqueer professionals into the sex education space.
Us, invite us. We want to be here. We're here and we're queer.
Yeah, I think like ultimately neuroqueer folks deserve sex education that reflects experiences, identities, different learning styles. And so I think the more we bring that inclusivity into how we talk about sex in general, I think the more empowered that everyone will be.
Yes, absolutely. I talk about this where I was at a munch. So, a munch, for people who are listening in, is like a kinky mixer, right? So, it's like for people of like minds, but it's basically like a happy hour, right? Not that there has to be drinking. There could be some games or whatever. And there were a group of us that stayed after, that chatted on, that we then went and got dinner. And like we were all talking, and it's like, I'm ADHD, I am ADHD. Like literally all of us in this, group of probably 6 of us, we're all neuroqueer. One of them is a fellow sex educator as well. We all, are kinky as well.
I thought there is a huge overlap of like intersectionality between folks who are neurodivergent and folks who are kinky. It's like research and anecdotally, which I find interesting.
Yes, and I feel like more of us are tapping into that realization. I have a feeling that there's like, in addition to some of the research that's already out there, that there's people doing PhD projects, whatever, already on this. So I'm excited to see in the next couple of years the additional research that comes out on that.
Me too. I find it so interesting and it's already known. So I would love to see the research to like even more so to support that as well.
Yeah, the consent, the sensory, right? The communication, like the direct communication, the structure. Yes.
All of it. Ooh, love it.
I mean, everybody here knows that I'm kinky as fuck. So,
Not as like loudly for the rooftop, but like I said, because it's such a common intersection too, though. Like a lot of people I work with who are neuroqueer are also kinky because it's just it all just goes together.
it goes together. We love it. Not that like everybody who's neuroqueer is also going to be kinky, vice versa, but there's a lot of us out there. So, with all of the experience and moving into the space, I would be curious for yourself. What is a personal relationship rule that you have like kicked to the curb, thrown out?
Probably that everything in a relationship has to be 50-50, like including like initiating sex or the household chores. And I say this as a lesbian feminist who, my wife and I think we have a very egalitarian type household because in theory, it sounds super wonderful and it makes sense. But I think this whole 50-50 concept is kind of unrealistic to just like life in general because it doesn't accommodate for things like different seasons of life, like with kids or job changes, different fluctuating energy levels or body changes, really anything that life wants to throw your way, which is a lot. So I feel like instead of expecting my wife to give 50 and I give 50 to her kind of all the time in every situation, it's more about consistently communicating where we're at with each other so that everything, like we just talked about, just feels more fair and flexible to both of us.
Yes. And what does that communication look like between you guys? Do you have a touch base or words that you say? How do you guys structure that?
We use numbers a lot, and I think I saw this from a therapist. It was not my concept, but it's basically like using numbers to explain where you're at. So whether it's like if we use the initiating sex example, like maybe at this point in time, like I've had a busy week. And so I'm just communicating with her like, hey, this week I have XYZ going on, which means I'm more social. I'm actually more of an introvert. So if I'm social, I'm a lot more tired. So yeah, just communicating, this is my schedule this week. So I'm busy, gonna be probably more tired. Maybe because I'm feeling only like 20, could you maybe be the other 80 and carry some of the things like initiating sex or even just the household chores or, for us we have 2 dogs and a cat, so with the pet work sometimes has to go into it, who's being extra fur mom a little bit. I'm just communicating those needs. For example, as well, my wife right now is going through a middle of a job search kind of transition. She's looking to find a new job. So that in itself is a lot of work and things to go through with that process. So just communicating like, okay, we're going through this right now. So I'm picking up a little bit more of the slack. Maybe she's at 30. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of the 70. And I think the numbers help her neurodivergence once again, having that like very specific and visual breakdown and that like structure with it, I think helps kind of gives like a more like a bigger, clearer picture for both of us. But she's mentioned that for her as well, though.
Yes. Ooh, everyone at home, all of our neuroqueer loves at home. Emily just gave us a perfect example. Try it, slide in our comments and our DMs and let us know how it goes for you.
Even if just like by yourself first, like start like note use it as a self-awareness tool. Like today I'm feeling this. If someone were to ask me to go to this today, I would have to say no because I'm only at a 30 or something. So it can be used as a good like self-awareness tool as well as with partners and other people as well.
Yes, so huge. Oh my God. And like with everything, start with yourself. For our neuroqueer loves that are out there, what do you want them to know that we haven't already touched on about sex, about intimacy? What is a permission slip that you want to give them?
I think like bringing it back to like the scripts we talked about at the very beginning, stop assuming the script is right in the first place. I think like, if the script doesn't fit, it's so much easier to blame yourself or instead of questioning or rewriting the script. And I think unfortunately, and a lot of folks end up doing is they end up blaming themselves and thinking that they're the problem when a lot of the time it's just the scripts that need, some questioning and some rewriting. So my permission slip is to throw out the script, write your own script.
Yes, write your own script. And I feel like you're a dual superpower person, right? Because you're neurodivergent and you're queer. So this is like two things that you have as like throwing out the scripts, paving your own path and making it see all of the colors, all of the beauty. Like, yes, yes, yes. The world does not live in this box. And as a neurodivergent queer person, we don't want you to live in the box. And not only that, but we want to help, like, that's a superpower I think that neuroqueer people have is helping neurotypical people learn how to get out of that box.
So glad you said it. Yes, yes. Louder for the people in the back. 100%. We're all in this together.
And I would also be interested in hearing like what are your recommendations for people who are neurotypical but in a relationship with a neuroqueer love and how can they best support what are ways to help them explore and make, their partner feel comfortable and the yummy goddess that they are. Goddesses, gods, whatever, non-binary or all of the things.
Definitely, I would say don't assume anything. This can be in terms of like, I used to assume, for example, fun fact, when we were talking before about how like my wife, who is also named Emily, by the way, I don't know if that came up, so that's fun.
It did not come up. I love it. Emily and Emily.
That's us. I know, it's so funny. So when she used to get, like, dysregulated and stuff like that, I would kind of just, like, assume what she would need it. Like, I was trying to be supportive, like, it's not like it was coming from a malintentioned place. It was trying to support her through it, but I wasn't asking what support she needed. I was assuming. And to be fair, I don't think she knew at the time either, but I think once again, that's where that self-awareness is important. So don't assume anything. And then I think a big thing too is to not take any processing time as rejection. People will need different processing time regardless for different situations and different things that come up, whether that's maybe 5 minutes or a couple of days or whatever. I think communicating what that processing time looks like for you so no one's left in the dark or left questioning, not having those answers of like when we're going to get back together and talk about it kind of thing. But don't take the processing time as automatic rejection just because someone needs more time to go through things and to, for things to fully absorb or for them to understand even like what they're feeling doesn't have to like show badly on you. It doesn't necessarily mean it's about you, it's about them.
Yes, I love that. Curiosity is such a pivotal key relationship tool. Use it, use it, use it. Use it for yourself, use it with others. I love that. Don't make assumptions. And also name what you need, right? Ask for clarity, right? Maybe we are making assumptions that this is popping in my head, that this is how I am like, name that. Say, this is how, I'm taking this situation or I'm interpreting your behavior, what you said. Let's touch base about that. Like, I want to know if is this right or what is, what are you intending type of thing, like just be curious. Yes, I love it. Emily, before we come to completion, is there anything else that you want to share about neuroqueerness?
I don't want anyone to think sensitivity is a weakness. I think it often is treated as a weakness, but sensitivity can make someone incredibly attuned not only to themselves, but also to their partners and their environment. And that same sensitivity that can sometimes make certain experiences feel a little more difficult in certain situations, I think it can also make pleasure and connection sometimes feel deeper or even richer. So your sensitivity is not a weakness.
Oh my God, that is so beautiful. As you were talking, I was thinking like so many of us who are neuroqueer have heard growing up, you're too sensitive. Like,
You're too much, always. Obviously, everyone I've worked with has said someone has told them they're too much in their lifetime, and I'm like, "You're not. You're just enough as it is, babe."
yes, yeah. So that is such a fabulous way to just bring this conversation to completion. So thank you, Emily. And thank you for the work that you're doing in supporting people who are neuroqueer and getting this information out there and also just allowing people to understand the beauty that neuroqueer folks are. All right, Emily, this is our coming to completion, AKA rapid fire round. So, Emily, the biggest myth about neuroqueer sex is blank.
There's only one right way to experience it.
Yes. Okay. A neuroqueer relationship doesn't have to look like blank to be successful.
Anyone else's. Don't compare, because neurodivergence is so individualistic. Not everyone experiences neurodiversity the same way, so yeah, don't compare it to anyone else's.
Absolutely. And so beautiful to co create that relationship with your partner, right?
Yes.
Yes. Sexy. Woo. All right. The sexiest accommodation someone can offer is this.
Genuine curiosity about what helps me feel good.
Oh my God. I think I got, ooh, now I'm hot and bothered.
See me, Amy.
Woo! Yes. Okay. I wish more neuroqueer folks gave themselves permission too.
Think outside the box. It's important. That's what I'm saying in the end.
I feel like we can say it so many times, like, think outside that box. Okay. The greenest green flag is someone who,
It doesn't treat your differences like they are problems to solve.
yeah. Ooh, that is spicy. I love it. Okay. The hottest form of communication is
Direct as possible.
absolutely. Pleasure gets easier when you stop blink.
Performing. Big one.
We're not performing, we're being authentic. All right. Something society calls awkward that I find incredibly attractive is.
Do you know when someone's like really, really excited or passionate about something they're talking about and they just kind of like get all extra as fuck about it? I love that. I think it's so cute and so sexy at the same time.
Yes. Oh my God. Like, Please.
Like, I'm like, info dump on me. Yes, please. Like, I love it.
I love it. Okay. One relationship rule I've happily thrown out is,
Yeah, probably same thing that like that everything has to be 50-50.
again, emphasizing it for the people in the back. Okay. If I could put one sentence on every dating profile, it would be,
What are your pronouns, your star signs, and your sensory needs?
ooh, yes, hot. I may be stealing that.
You do. If I can see it in everyone's profile, let's go.
Yes. Oh my God. I would stop. I would stop like scrolling, because I'm like this when I'm swiping like left and right, mostly left, but very fast. I'm like a dude when I am looking at profiles. It's too funny.
You know what you like, you know what you like.
Exactly. But if I saw that, I would stop scrolling and I would be like zooming in more and answering those questions. Yes.
It's a scroll stopper, and I feel like neuroqueer folks would be like, it's a green flag. It's like the rainbow for neuroqueers. It's like, ah, yes, okay, safe space in all the ways. Got this.
Okay. What's one thing neuroqueer people understand about pleasure, intimacy, or relationships that the rest of us could learn from?
Probably that like predictability is not good, or it's like the enemy of connection. I think it's really more so often what makes connection feel more possible is having that predictability.
I love that. Predictability for me, super hot. Bring it on.
Yeah, for a lot of neurodivergent and neuroqueer folks, honestly.
Yeah. And finally, what is a relationship or sex rule you'd love to see more people give themselves permission to break?
That your partner should meet all of your needs. I think that friendships and queer communities or having communities or kink communities, everything is so important that you can spread out what you need as a human, that not one person, especially if in a long term monogamous relationship, that one person doesn't have to provide everything for you.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my God. So, so good. Yeah, that brought me back to last year around Pride. I had a lot of queer folks on as guests, and community came up as such a common thread throughout those conversations. And I feel like queer folks are really good at building community. So, I'll learn from us, okay? Emily, before we wrap up, you have some really exciting offerings happening this month. Can you tell us about it?
Thank you so much, Amy, for having me. I love talking about all things neuroqueer. And yeah, I understand that figuring out intimacy as a neuroqueer person can be daunting or seem more challenging if you've maybe like recently come out or just kind of realized you were neurospicy. So I've created a webinar called From Awkward to Assured to kind of help you feel more confident in your sex and relationships without, awkwardness or dysregulation, none of that fun stuff. So it also includes a 10-page guided workbook with reflection prompts, exercises, and tools from the webinar so that you can start integrating what you learned right away. So if you are listening to this and you're thinking, hey, I'm a neuroqueer cutie, maybe not feeling so confident about sex and relationships right now, you can check out the webinar by clicking the link in the show notes. I'll give that to you, Amy.
Yes, that's amazing. Ah, and where else can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me online on Instagram at Emily Zed, Zed, Sex Ed, because Canadian, gotta spell Zed the way we do, as well as my website, emilyzedsexed.com.
That's amazing. I will definitely have your information and the course link in the show notes. Emily, thank you for being here. We love you guys at home. Thank you for listening in. I want to hear from you. What is your takeaways? Share the if you have a neuroqueer love in your life, please share this conversation with them. And then we want to hear from them. What are things that they have learned about their own intimacy, relationships, breaking down those fucking boxes and building their own magical world when it comes to sex and relationships. So tell us all of the things. We love you. Happy Pride, everyone. As always, remember to masturbate, lubricate, and get it. As always, thank you for coming. Please come again, and come again.
That's all for today, lover. Remember to masturbate, lubricate, and get it. If you liked this episode, share with a friend, like, subscribe, and as always, thank you for coming. Please come again, and come again.